My Lords, I rise to move amendments 52A, 52B, 52C, 54A, B, C, 55B and 55C that relate to clauses 97, 98, 99. And I'm very supportive of the Noble Lord Blencathra's amendments and comments, and also from the Bishop of St Albans. It's in that spirit that I make these observations. One issue that the building safety and cladding crisis has shone a light on is just how iniquitous residential leasehold tenure really is. The system of leaseholder may dress itself up as home ownership, and I have to say that when I bought my flat 25 years ago, the first time I'd ever bought anything or got a mortgage, I thought of myself very proudly as a homeowner who it was kind of part of my growing up. But I do think now that it was a bit of a missell, as I'm nothing of the sorts. As Rabina Khan, a Liberal Democrat councillor in Tower Hamlets, puts it, and she's been very insightful on all of these issues, and she puts the point that leaseholders are effectively tenants when it comes to rights and only owners when it comes to paying the bills. Leaseholders have no control over contractors or the cost and scope of any works and must pay pretty much whatever is demanded by the freeholder, landlord and or managing agent. Now, in this section 4 of the bill and the clauses that I'm referring to, building owners are being given sweeping new rights over entry and surveillance of leaseholders' homes in the name of safety and fire prevention, and even being able to force entry if the leaseholder does not admit entry to the home to their own homes by a set time. Leaseholders that I have spoken to are concerned that these Part 4 provisions could be used to threaten and harass leaseholders and are overly intrusive, over-intrusive without affecting fire safety in any real way, and more broadly feeds into a dangerous atmosphere that I think we're familiar with around the COVID period and lockdowns of dispensing with civil liberties and privacy too easily under the auspices of safety. So the amendments to clauses 97, 98 and 99 that I've put in come together as a package and try to tighten up the drafting to ensure that proportionate actions don't leave leaseholders open to either false accusations and blame for safety issues, so that this doesn't become yet another vehicle for forcing leaseholders to pay ever more money, and respects the rights of leaseholders as homeowners. Clause 97, as it stands, places a duty on every occupant of a high-risk building not to interfere with safety features. The focus here is making it clear that residents have a duty not to affect the safety of the building. My amendment to Clause 97 makes it clear that this duty is only breached where there is material interference. This change, for example, would avoid someone being found in breach of the duty if they accidentally broke the glass in a dry riser door, or if they accidentally broke a hinge on a fire door, because the current drafting would not treat those as accidents but as breaches of duty in the same way as someone deliberately disabling a fire alarm. Clause 98, as it reads, allows an accountable person to send a notice, possibly demanding money, if the accountable person knows or, importantly, just suspects that there has been a breach of this new resident's duty. And again, this section has no materiality threshold, so it can be triggered by any breach that the accountable person feels like enforcing. It, as it stands, is far too subjective. It is blatantly open to malicious misuse or just a promiscuous and ever-growing risk of adverse blame culture, targeting leaseholders as culprits. The proposed amendment that I put forward tightens it up to focus on material breaches that the accountable person can actually evidence, a key point. Clause 99 is on the power of entry. The current drafting allows the accountable person to demand access for any reason, including mere suspicion of a breach of the duty, and this demand for access can be given with as little as 48 hours notice. If access is not given in that time frame, the accountable person can then obtain a court order, possibly without a notice to the person affected. And this makes what should be a last resort possibly a new normal, and a new draconian normal, I'd argue. The new clause that I have proposed, before clause 99, requires that the new building safety regulator issues a code of practice on how exactly this power is to be used after consulting with a tenants panel. Now, that's not a perfect solution, but at least the onus would be on the accountable person to comply with the code of practice when making requests for access to people's homes. Now, as has already been mentioned by a number of speakers so far, I'm not trying to paint a picture here of dastardly freeholders, building owners or managing agents gleefully harassing leaseholders or threatening to kick their doors down. But for me, one of the inevitable consequences of a disproportionate zero-risk attitude to building safety, with an ever-growing proliferation of demands and duties placed on the accountable person, requiring that they check and check again, means that we actually do end up where the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, warns us not to end up. Because in another context, he has, to these clauses, he's warned of the dangerous overzealousness of inspections, of unnecessary surveys and precautionary just-in-case assessments. And I do think that all of this fuels the notion that not only is each and every flat a fire hazard, but that each and every owner of a flat is a fire hazard too. Because as soon as safety measures become a disproportionate fear, it can lead to much perverse outcomes. So at the Public Bill Committee in June 2020, L&Q, one of the biggest social landlords responsible for 95,000 homes, including leaseholders and shared ownership properties, complained about the difficulties of accessing the front doors of leaseholders, implying that leaseholders who refuse to go along with their never-ending fire safety upgrades might be putting lives at risk. And I quote, "With tenants, we might be able to go to court and get injunctions to gain access to a home, but with leases, that challenge becomes more difficult." And that's sort of said as a matter of regret. This attitude means that these provisions presume leaseholders can't be trusted. I think that they belie a certain contempt that treats leaseholders as ignorant or stupid or both, as though if left alone, away from the wise and sensible landlord or his or her appointed overseer, they might set up a barbecue in the living room or take to rewiring their own flats, even though they're not electricians, or act like children irresponsibly playing with matches, or willfully destroying safety equipment, as the noble Lord Blencathra mentioned. Is the inference. The inference then is that the building owner or the freeholder needs to be able to keep an eye on what goes on behind the door of our homes, to have easy access regardless of leaseholders' rights. And I don't even exaggerate, because the trend is to treat flat owners as though they have no more rights than renters. And, of course, renters should have more rights, by the way. Again, to quote the L&Q spokesperson from that committee, "It is their private space and we cannot touch it," is the complaint. And it goes on to suggest that leaseholders' property rights ought to be curtailed in the name of safety. It says, quote, "Ultimately, if there was a way of transferring ownership of a leaseholder's property through legislation so that it was no longer theirs but the building owners, that would solve the problem." Well, wouldn't it just? But I think we can see the direction of travel here, and it's not in the leaseholders' rights direction. Of course, because of the devastating death toll of the Grenfell tragedy, the emotional weight of these clauses seems to overcome any squeamishness about leaseholders' rights and civil liberties. And I therefore just wanted to conclude that even in pragmatic terms, these clauses won't enhance safety, even though I do think that leaseholders' rights and civil liberties should not be dismissed so easily in the name of safety. But on the safety question, entry into people's homes would not have spotted the cause of the fire at Lakanal House in South London in July 2009, when 6 died and 20 were injured, because that was about a TV developing an electrical fault. Entry into people's homes would not have prevented fire at New Providence Wharf last May, where a faulty circuit breaker ignited. Nor, of course, at Grenfell, where the cause was a faulty fridge freezer. Or indeed in my own block of flats in Haringey, where the block that went ablaze in the first lockdown, and I'm still not returned, started in a fridge fire in another flat. No one could have known these appliances would fail. There will be similar issues in the future, no doubt. But the shocking thing about those fires is not that each of them happened, they did happen, but the shocking bit was that the damage and death was worse than they should have been, partly because of a failure to main fire safety systems, not because of a lack of surveillance on leaseholders' activities in their own homes. So I think we need to row back from potentially blaming leaseholders.